May 7th, 1945. A train pulls out of Breslau, Germany in the dead of night. No passenger manifests, no official records, no scheduled destination, but 300 armed SS guards riding in silence. The cargo? $5 billion in gold. The train entered a mountain tunnel in Lower Silesia and was never seen again. 80 years later, treasure hunters are still digging. Governments are still lying. And somewhere beneath the mountains of Poland, $5 billion in Nazi gold waits in the dark. This is the story of the greatest treasure hunt in human history. Welcome to Intellectuals' Lullaby. To understand the gold, we must first understand how the Nazis became the richest criminals in history. 1933. Adolf Hitler takes power in Germany. Within 12 years, the Nazi regime would plunder the wealth of an entire continent. But this wasn't just theft. It was systematic, organized, industrial. And the methods they used would shock even the most hardened investigators decades later. It began with the Jews, not with violence at first, but with paperwork. The Nuremberg Laws of 1935 stripped Jewish citizens of their property rights, bank accounts frozen, businesses confiscated, real estate seized. All legal, all documented, all sanctioned by the state. Imagine standing in your own home, the home your grandfather built, where your children were born, and a man in a brown uniform hands you a piece of paper. It says, you have 24 hours. 24 hours to leave everything behind. By 1938, the Nazi state had accumulated over $400 million in seized assets. But that was just the beginning. Then came the invasions: Poland, France, Belgium, Netherlands, Norway, Greece, Yugoslavia. Nation after nation fell before the Wehrmacht. And behind the advancing army came the economic plunderers. The Einsatzstab Reichsleiter Rosenberg, the ERR. A Nazi organization with one purpose: systematic, methodical, total confiscation. They emptied museums, stripped palaces, raided private collections. Paintings by Rembrandt, sculptures by Michelangelo, manuscripts from the Middle Ages. But more than art, gold, jewelry, diamonds, currency. The central banks of Europe emptied into German train cars. And all of it, every ounce of gold, every priceless painting, was catalogued, numbered, tracked. The Nazis kept meticulous records. Those records would later reveal something terrifying. By 1944, the Nazi war machine was running on stolen wealth. Hermann Göring's personal collection alone was worth over $200 million. But Göring was small-time compared to what the SS had hidden. The Reichsbank vaults in Berlin held gold bars stamped with the seals of 12 conquered nations. The Swiss National Bank accepted Nazi gold deposits, asking no questions. And deep in the Austrian Alps, in a salt mine near the town of Altaussee, SS officers were hiding what they called the Führer's collection: 6,000 paintings, entire libraries. And gold. So much gold that the mine elevators couldn't hold it all at once. But none of that compares to what disappeared in May of 1945. Because as the Third Reich collapsed, as the Allies closed in from the West and the Soviets from the East, someone gave an order. An order to move the largest cache of gold the Nazis had ever assembled. And that gold vanished into the mountains. Before we continue this journey into one of history's deepest mysteries, if you're finding yourself drawn into this story, captivated by these hidden truths, consider subscribing to Intellectuals' Lullaby. We explore the invisible threads of history, the secrets that shaped our world, the mysteries that still haunt us. New stories every week. Stories designed to engage your mind while letting your body drift into rest. Now let's return to May 7th, 1945, the night the gold train disappeared. The Russian army was 60 miles from Berlin. The city was burning. Adolf Hitler would be dead within 3 days. The Third Reich was collapsing in real time. But in the chaos, in those final desperate hours, someone was moving treasure. Maria Kowalski was 11 years old, living in the village of Wałbrzych in Lower Silesia, now part of Poland, then still under Nazi control. Years later, in 1978, she would give testimony to Polish authorities. She remembered the trains. It was past midnight, she said. Her mother had pulled her away from the window, but she saw long, armoured cars, heavy, moving slowly on the tracks, the sound of metal grinding against metal, and soldiers, dozens of them, SS uniforms, machine guns. They weren't there to fight. They were there to guard something. The train moved through Wałbrzych toward the mountains. And then, Maria said, the train entered the Owl Mountains. A range of peaks riddled with tunnels, some natural, some carved by Nazi engineers during the war. The train never came out the other side. Now, here's where the story gets stranger, because Maria wasn't the only witness. In 1990, a former Nazi officer gave a deathbed confession in Argentina. His name was kept sealed, but his testimony was recorded. He claimed he was part of the engineering corps that built a secret chamber inside the Owl Mountains, a chamber large enough to hide an entire train. He said the entrance was collapsed after the train went in, sealed with dynamite, buried under rock. Impossible to find without the original plans. And those plans, he burned them. May 8th, 1945. For decades, this was dismissed as fantasy, the ramblings of an old man. But then, in 2015, two treasure hunters made an announcement. Piotr Koper and Andreas Richter. They had ground-penetrating radar, professional equipment, serious funding. And they claimed they had found it. The radar showed a large object, underground, roughly 100 meters long, the shape of a train. The Polish government got involved. The media descended on Wałbrzych. Treasure hunters from around the world started arriving. They dug. For months they dug, and they found nothing. But here's what they don't tell you. The Polish government stopped the dig, classified the site, restricted access, said it was for safety reasons. But several of the researchers noted something strange. Military trucks arriving at night, removing something. What did they find that the government didn't want revealed? We'll return to that in a moment. But first, we need to talk about the other locations, because the train might be the most famous hiding place, but it's not the only one. We're deep into this mystery now, and if you're still with me, you're the kind of person who loves these hidden corners of history. These stories that most people never hear. By subscribing to Intellectuals' Lullaby, you're joining a community of curious minds, people who think deeply, who question what they're told. Hit that subscribe button, and every week we'll explore another mystery together. Another hidden truth. Another story that haunts the shadows of history. Now let's talk about Lake Toplitz, the deepest, darkest, most mysterious lake in Austria, and what the Nazis threw into its waters. Picture a mountain lake in the Austrian Alps, surrounded by peaks, no roads leading to it, only footpaths. The water so deep that sunlight never reaches the bottom. This is Lake Toplitz. And in the final weeks of World War II, SS officers arrived here in the middle of the night. They brought crates, heavy crates, sealed with Nazi stamps. They loaded them onto boats, rowed out to the center of the lake, and dropped them into the darkness. No one was supposed to know. But a local villager watched from the trees. For decades, Lake Toplitz was off limits. The Austrian government banned diving, said it was too dangerous, but treasure hunters don't listen to governments. 1959, first dive, found nothing. 1963, another dive, found Nazi counterfeit currency, millions of pounds sterling, but no gold. 1983, a professional diving team with military-grade equipment. They found wooden crates, weapons, documents, and the body of a previous diver who had disappeared 20 years earlier. But still no gold. So what were the Nazis hiding in Lake Toplitz? Some believe the counterfeit currency was the real treasure. Operation Bernhard, a Nazi plan to destabilize the British economy by flooding it with fake pounds. But others believe the gold is still down there, at the very bottom, where the pressure would crush any diver who tried to reach it. Then there's Switzerland, neutral Switzerland, the country that claimed no side in the war. But Swiss banks accepted Nazi gold deposits throughout the entire war. No questions asked. In 1944 alone, Switzerland accepted over $400 million in gold from Nazi Germany. Gold stamped with the seals of Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg. Gold that had been melted down from jewellery, dental fillings, wedding rings. Gold from the dead. After the war, Switzerland said the accounts were lost. No records, no paperwork, nothing to trace. But in 1996, a janitor in a Swiss bank found documents in a trash bin. Documents listing thousands of accounts belonging to Holocaust victims. Accounts the banks claimed didn't exist. The Swiss government was forced to investigate. What they found would lead to a $15 billion settlement. But here's the question no one can answer. If they found $15 billion in accounts they claimed didn't exist, how much is still hidden? There's one more place we need to discuss. A place where the Allies actually found Nazi gold. The Merkers Salt Mine. April 4th, 1945. American soldiers from the 90th Infantry Division entered a salt mine in central Germany. They were looking for ammunition, weapons caches. What they found? Gold bars, stacked floor to ceiling, art, hundreds of masterpieces, stolen from across Europe, and currency. Bags and bags of currency, from a dozen different nations. General Dwight Eisenhower flew in personally to see it. He walked through chambers filled with treasure. Later, he would say it was one of the most surreal moments of his life. The Merkers mine contained over 250 tons of gold, worth billions. All of it carefully catalogued, photographed, documented. And that's important, because the Nazis were meticulous record keepers. They documented everything. So when Allied investigators began comparing Nazi records to what they'd found, they discovered something disturbing. The numbers didn't match. According to Nazi banking records, there should have been more gold. A lot more. Estimates vary. Some say $5 billion in gold is still missing. Others say $10 billion. But everyone agrees. Somewhere, the Nazis hid their greatest treasure. And no one has ever found it. So, where is it? Let's examine the three main theories. Theory 1. The Allies found it and kept it secret. Think about it. May 1945. Germany has surrendered. The war is over. But Europe is destroyed. Economies are shattered. Millions are starving. If the Allies found billions in gold, would they announce it to the world? Or would they quietly use it to rebuild? There are documents, classified until the 1980s. They show Allied intelligence had maps, locations, informants. They knew about the tunnels, the hiding places, and there are gaps in the official records. Weeks where certain units were marked as special assignment. No details, no mission reports. Convenient. But if the Allies found it, where did the money go? Into government coffers? Into the Marshall Plan? Into private hands? We may never know. Theory 2. The gold is still out there. This is what the treasure hunters believe, and they have compelling evidence. Ground-penetrating radar shows anomalies, large metallic objects underground. Geological surveys reveal vast tunnel networks, many still unexplored. And there are the confessions, dozens of them, from Nazi officers, engineers, guards, most dismissed as fantasy, but some have led to discoveries. In 2009, a researcher following a deathbed confession found a collapsed tunnel entrance in Bavaria. He excavated for 3 months and found a chamber, sealed since 1945. Inside, crates, marked with SS stamps. And when he opened them, gold bars, 47 of them, worth over $2 million. That's just one chamber, in one tunnel, in one mountain range. How many more are still hidden? Theory 3. There is no gold. This is what some historians believe. They say the treasure is a myth. By 1945, Germany's economy was in ruins. The gold had been spent, used to fund the war machine. What the Nazis had left was found. At Merkers, at other sites. The rest is fantasy, propaganda, legend. But even these skeptics admit the records don't add up. There are transactions with no corresponding assets, deposits with no withdrawals, and those witness testimonies from people who had no reason to lie. So where does that leave us? 80 years later, in 2026, the search continues. We're near the end of this journey. But before we close, if this story has given you something to think about, if you found yourself captivated by these mysteries, consider making Intellectuals' Lullaby part of your nightly ritual. Every week we explore the hidden corners of history, the stories that haunt us, that challenge us, that make us question what we think we know. Subscribe and join us on this journey into the quiet mysteries of our world. Now let's bring this story to a close. Today, in the mountains of Poland, treasure hunters still search. With modern equipment, ground-penetrating radar, metal detectors, looking for what might be the greatest treasure in history. In Switzerland, bank vaults still hold accounts from the 1940s, accounts whose owners never returned. And in the Austrian Alps, Lake Toplitz keeps its secrets. The water, dark and deep and cold. Perhaps the gold doesn't matter anymore. Perhaps what matters is what it represents, the greed that led to war, the theft that funded genocide, the secrets that powerful people still keep. $5 billion in gold, somewhere beneath the earth, or lost to history. Either way, the mystery remains. Until next time, sleep well and dream deeply. This has been Intellectuals' Lullaby.